Hello, you're listening to the pharmaphorum podcast. I'm Dominic Tyer, pharmaphorum's creative and editorial director. For this episode, I spoke with Vertex's senior country manager in the UK and Ireland, Nicola Massey. She was still fairly new in post when we spoke, so we started off with her career path to joining Vertex, but also what it was like to join virtually, something that's increasingly common for many people in the industry at the moment. Nicola also talked about her management approach and empowering her teams, as well as Vertex's place in the UK and what's next for the company. You can find more details of this episode, including a download link for the podcast and information about other instalments in the series at pharmaphorum.com/podcast. The Pharmaphorum podcast is also available on iTunes, Spotify, Acast, Stitcher and Podbean, where you can find and subscribe to it by searching for Pharmaphorum. Nicola, welcome to the Pharmaphorum podcast.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So you started as Vertex's new senior country manager in the UK and Ireland in September. Can you tell us a bit about your career path to Vertex?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I started my pharmaceutical career as a medical representative at MSD. And from there progressed sort of through more senior commercial roles at Park Davis and Sanofi and Shire, where I was appointed the UK and Ireland country manager. And that was at the point when Shire was really transitioning to a rare disease focus. And it gave me the opportunity during this time to lead industry task forces, which championed for access for patients with rare diseases. And really look to achieve that access by working with government and NHS stakeholders. And then in September 2020, I was appointed the UK and Ireland Senior Country Manager at Vertex. And I was delighted to join at such a pivotal time for the organisation because I've been able to support the organisation in building on the landmark agreements that we achieved and were secured to grant access to our cystic fibrosis medicines across the UK.
And what was it that in particular that attracted you to Vertex and your current role?
Many things, but I think the scientific innovation is really at the core of Vertex's ethos, and we've got a strong history of using really great innovative science to develop transformative medicines that really make a difference to patients' lives, and in particular, a strong focus on those with serious diseases. Across the world, 3 out of 5 of our employees are dedicated to R&D and our science. And Vertex is all about supporting people living with cystic fibrosis right now. And despite the progress that's been made for these patients, there's much more to do. Additionally, Vertex has a really attractive company culture, which I felt aligned with my personal values, ensuring that the patients we support are placed right at the heart of the business, along with a really strong focus on diversity so that, all colleagues can bring their authentic self to work. And I was also really impressed with the corporate responsibility, which is really high on the agenda here. And giving back is really part of our DNA. As an example, the Vertex Foundation is a long-term source of charitable giving, which has an initial global commitment of $10 million. And at the beginning of the COVID pandemic in 2020 in the UK, the foundation donated a total of £550,000 to 3 UK organisations, the Trussell Trust, Crisis and Age UK, to support their COVID-19 efforts. And these are all causes which are very important to the company.
Thanks. And like many people at the moment, including some of the guests I've had on this podcast and indeed at Pharmaphorum ourselves, you've joined your new company virtually, I believe. Can you talk a bit about that and what do you think is needed to successfully join a company in a virtual way, given the pandemic?
Yes, it's my whole interview process and onboarding has all been done remotely. But Vertex has put in place a really great induction process, which allowed me to connect with my network in the company. And the colleagues that I've met have been really generous with their time and their knowledge. Personally, I've invested time to keep those relationships going. And I think culturally within Vertex, I'm encouraged to freely contact and connect with people across all levels and functions to really tap into their expertise. And that's to enable me to build the best country plans possible. So I think that approach and that culture has been a real positive force. During the pandemic, we've continued to recruit, and actually several hundred people globally have been onboarded successfully. But I think by this stage, we're all kind of keen to finally meet in person and have the opportunity to bump elbows.
Absolutely. I mean, do you think you spoke a little bit there about trying to needing to maintain and build relationships? Do you think you need to work harder at that in the current sort of virtual work environment that a lot of us are in, or does it just need to be done in a different way?
Yeah, so I think, for me, coming in as a senior country manager and thinking, how do I, establish myself and make a positive difference? For me, it was really about how do I build trust with the team? How do you achieve that remotely? How do I add value? How do I ask the right questions and create the right challenges with the team? And it's also been really important to get to know the team and their hopes and aspirations, and get to know them as people. The Vertex UK and Ireland team is a really great team. Everybody's passionate, they're engaged, and they're really committed to delivering excellence for the patients that we serve. And I think Vertex itself has been very successful in adapting to remote working. I think throughout the pandemic, we've prioritised the health and well-being of employees, and Vertex has ensured that all employees have the right equipment at home to effectively carry out their role successfully. We have additional synchronous global holidays which have been given, Wellness Wednesdays, where we're encouraged to take a couple of hours out of the day at lunchtime to really kind of get away from the desk and take some time for wellness activities. And then we also have Zoom-free Fridays, again, just to kind of ensure that people don't necessarily feel that need to be, on camera, on show all the time. And that's, again, a way of supporting employee welfare during the challenging times.
Mm-hmm. And what sorts of things do people tend to do on their Wellness Wednesday time? How have you been able to use that time yourself?
Yes, yeah, and actually as a leader, it's been really important for me to kind of role model that. It's too easy just to carry on, at your desk sending emails, but that doesn't set the right example for the team. So we've had, opportunities where, for a lunchtime, every employee was encouraged to kind of go out, take photos of being outside, and then every photo that was posted on our intranet, Vertex committed to planting a tree for those photos. So again, it's a really great example of how we look to give back and support employees.
So you've joined as the senior country manager for the UK and Ireland. Could you talk a bit about your management approach? How would you describe it?
Yes, and for me as a leader, personally, I see that my role is to really ensure we've got that shared vision for the team, that it's aligned to the overall goals of the company, but that every individual understands their contribution to that goal. And it's about nurturing that inclusive environment where people can speak up, can contribute, can challenge, and really allow them to be their authentic self with their own diverse experiences, and enable them to achieve their best work. And, I've seen personally across the years when people work together and they're supported to work effectively as a true cross-functional team, it can have some really great outcomes for patients and for the business. And everyone just loves to be part of a successful, high-performing team. So I think a key part of my role is really to be an enabler, to align a team around the goals, to remove blocks for them, to secure the resources that they need, and then to challenge them constructively and support that delivery of performance. And I think if you, try and put all of those ingredients together, then it's really, I think, about creating the pathway for them to go on and to be successful.
And in terms of management within the context of the pharmaceutical industry, are there particular things, do you think, that work and that don't work? Are there maybe do's and don'ts you personally try to follow?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in pharma and biotech and in Vertex, I think we're fortunate that we attract real talent into the industry, and people with great brains, with brilliant ideas. And as a leader, I have to make sure that those ideas, that innovation, can really flourish. That ideas have somewhere to go to be heard, and it therefore might sound slightly contradictory to say that I found that it's critical to ensure that teams really understand where the guardrails are, what the compliance rules are, and the rules and the framework. And I think once a team understands that and they're confident within that framework, then that's where they can really bring great ideas to life. And I think also it's great too that we get to make a difference every day, with our support of patients. And I ensure that I recognise and remind the employees how their work is making that positive difference every day. We're very fortunate to be able to come to work, making a difference to people living with serious diseases, such as cystic fibrosis. And it's just fantastic to be able to remind employees of the value of the work they do, and with some really real examples of the difference that we've made to people living with cystic fibrosis.
And so, in addition to that, are there other things you try to do in terms of empowering your teams at Vertex?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely critical that teams feel empowered and able to deliver, particularly working remotely. So, I really work hard to try and empower my team, seeing them really as individuals who, can each play a crucial role in achieving the goals. And actually, as individuals, when they work together, you can also have that multiplier effect as well and achieve really great outcomes. So, as I've already mentioned, as a leader, it's my role to provide employees, I think, with the tools, to exemplify the core values and to really strive for excellence. And again, empowering teams by recognising the diversity, the difference of opinions and views of, previous experiences. All of those things really create inclusive working teams. And I think a big part of our culture is that we recognise that each Vertexian brings those diverse perspectives and strengths, and that, by embracing and celebrating the strengths and the differences, we can really inspire innovation together.
So, Nicola, how do you see the environment evolving for the UK pharma industry?
It's been extremely encouraging, I think, to hear the government's commitment to support a strong life sciences sector in the UK. We want to continue to work with the government, with the NHS and our industry peers to develop initiatives such as, the Innovative Medicines Fund, the Life Sciences Innovation Manifesto, and the Plan for Growth. And it's really interesting as well. The MHRA has signalled their willingness to be a leading regulator, with faster, more flexible approval routes, including global cooperation, combining regulatory and access pathways, which is all really interesting. We're delighted that we've just had our first licence extension recently approved locally by the MHRA, which is great. And we're looking forward to working, more closely with the regulator in the future. It'll be particularly interesting to see how the MHRA's innovative licensing and access pathway can accelerate time to market and patient access through the MHRA, NICE, SMC, NHS, all companies working together.
So, moving on to more corporate perspective, I suppose, what would you say is Vertex's place in the UK?
Yeah, and it's a really great question because I think, we've got a really strong footprint in the UK. Vertex was founded in 1989 in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and now those years later we're a global biotechnology company, investing significantly in scientific innovation to create transformative medicines. And here we've invested over 70% of our operating expenses back into R&D, and that's much more than the industry average of 20%. Specifically in the UK, Vertex has invested £1.5 billion in the UK operations since 2006. And that includes the opening of our international headquarters in Paddington, which was in 2015. And we also have our only European R&D site here in the UK, and that's in Oxford. That opened in 1998, and that centre is devoted to our research programmes and does some great work there. So when you put those two sites together, along with the UK operating company, which I head up, we have around 370 full-time Vertex employees in the UK, and that's our largest footprint outside the US. So a really significant commitment from Vertex. As I've already mentioned, our core focus today is on CF medicine, and our work has really fundamentally changed the way that CF is treated. All 4 of our currently licensed medicines in the UK can be accessed by eligible patients, thanks to the long-term reimbursement agreements that we've got in place with the various health authorities across the 4 nations. And the UK has been a great place for us to carry out clinical trials. Since 2006, Vertex has carried out more than 65 clinical trials in the UK, and actually more than 50 of those have been in CF.
Bring that picture up to date then. How was 2020 for the company? How did Vertex in the UK fare during last year's pandemic year?
Yeah. As with every company, every industry, it's been a period of huge change. The business and all of our teams had to really rapidly adapt to full-time remote working at the start of the pandemic. And I'm just so proud of how the team have worked so tirelessly to achieve our goals during the last year. Our Oxford site is an R&D site. It's lab-based. They quickly adapted to new ways of working in the labs so that their crucial work continued and wasn't slowed down. Coming in midway through that, I've also been impressed by the support that Vertex provided to all employees during the pandemic, some of which I've already mentioned. And there really is a strong focus on employee well-being, regular surveys to ensure that we're hearing and acting on employee feedback.
And as well as ensuring you were supporting employees, what was the company able to do to help support patients and healthcare professionals?
Well, in 2020 in the UK, we actually remotely launched one of our CF medicines right in the middle of the pandemic. Back in June 2020, NHS England recognised the value of our latest therapy for cystic fibrosis, and we were able to work quickly and collaboratively with them to expand the existing agreement that we had in place for reimbursement to include our latest medicine, Kaftrio, before it was even licensed. And having that agreement in place meant, before the marketing authorisation, meant that clinicians could start prescribing as soon as the licence was granted last August. Of course, the cystic fibrosis community was particularly affected by the pandemic. Many patients were having to shield as a clinically vulnerable group. So we were very aware that we had to work closely with healthcare professionals to ensure that we could provide them with the support, with the information that they needed at the point we launched our medicine. And we did that by pivoting to, online and digital resourcing and remote interactions. And now at this stage, more than 3/4 of CF patients who are eligible for our medicines are on the medicine, 3/4. And we've recently just received approval for a further extension of our licence, meaning more patients can benefit. So, considering the established UK benchmarks, which, we're all familiar with, I'm extremely proud of this achievement with the team. This speed has been significant for this launch. And this is, I think, a great example of how a company can work in partnership with the NHS to the rapid benefit of patients. And of course, all of that was achieved remotely.
And in terms of some of those pivots to digital interactions, as you mentioned, I think a lot of us are really keen to be able to get back into the office and see people face to face. But do you have a sense of how far that pivot to more digital interactions will swing back, or is it still a bit too early to tell?
I think every company is looking at this and asking themselves that question, and we're very much looking at what's going to be most effective for our healthcare professionals, and what's the right timing for our healthcare professionals.
So finally then, Nicola, can you tell me a bit about what's next for Vertex in the UK and Ireland?
It's really now ensuring that we complete our journey with cystic fibrosis. We continue to put the patients we support at the centre of the treatment, at the centre of our business, and we ensure that the medicines get to those that need them. There are still CF patients who aren't yet eligible for our medicines, so the research continues. Beyond CF, we have a strong pipeline of small molecule medicines in other serious diseases, including pain, alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency, which is a rare inherited condition which can cause lung and liver problems, and APOL1 mediated kidney diseases, a severe disorder which again can lead to kidney failure. Vertex has also a rapidly expanding pipeline of genetic and cell therapies for diseases such as sickle cell, beta thalassemia and type 1 diabetes. So it's a really exciting time to be at the company as we continue our journey in CF, but also, look to how we build into new therapy areas. I personally feel passionate about ensuring that we continue to attract the brightest and the best talent, and at the same time, develop and support the personal career aspirations of the existing team. We're a small, agile and rapidly growing biotech, with some real ambitions for growth. And I think as we move into new therapy areas, there'll continue to be new and exciting opportunities.
Well, certainly best of luck for that journey, Nicola. But in the meantime, thank you very much for joining me on the pharmaphorum podcast.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me, Dominic. Thank you.
And that concludes episode 39 of the pharmaphorum podcast and my discussion with Nicola Massey from Vertex. You can find more details of this episode, including a download link for the podcast and information about other instalments in the series at pharmaphorum.com/podcast. The pharmaphorum podcast is also available on iTunes, Spotify, Acast, Stitcher and Podbean, where you can find and subscribe to it by searching for pharmaphorum. And don't forget to visit our website to sign up for daily or weekly email pharmaceutical news and analysis bulletins. And follow us on Twitter, where we are at pharmaphorum.